This third part of the defense of loss of control is all about comparing the defendant with another reasonable hypothetical person like the defendant and asking whether somebody else in that situation, faced with that trigger, would have lost control and murdered another person. It can really be broken down into two separate parts. The first part is about whether a person would have lost control, and the second part is about how that person would have lost control, whether they would have reacted and lost control in the same way as the defendant. So the first part of our comparison is to compare with a person of the same sex and age with a normal degree of tolerance and self-restraint and ask whether they would have lost control faced with that trigger. The fact that a defendant may have a history of losing it or be known to have a fiery temper cannot, however, be included in our hypothetical comparison. There's no getting away with it. Juries sometimes, like we all do, work a little bit in stereotypes, and the young and male are known for losing their temper or losing it in certain situations, while the elderly with their years of wisdom may have more control over their emotions. So this part is all about, would another person of the same sex and age, normal degree of self-control, have lost control in that situation faced with that trigger? This part of the question is all about what the defendant did or how they reacted when they actually lost control. And the question we ask is, would such a person in the same circumstances have reacted in the same way? Now, once again, we compare the defendant with a reasonable person. But this time, instead of just same sex and age, the reasonable person can have similar characteristics to the defendant. For example, possible characteristics might be race, sexuality, deformity, or perhaps a history of sexual abuse. In order to understand and to compare the defendant with with a reasonable person, the reasonable person must be similar to that person to understand if their reaction, what they did, whether they stabbed someone or stamped on his head 2 or 3 times. If a person is being teased about their sexuality or insulted about their sexuality, then the only way to work out whether their reaction was a reasonable one and something that other people would do is if we compare them to a person with the same sexuality. And the same applies to race. If the person has a birthmark on their face or some kind of deformity and they are being insulted or teased about that, the only way we can understand the gravity and see the reaction that the defendant has done is by giving the reasonable person we are comparing them with the same sort of characteristics.